And welcome to episode 8 of Community Solutions Radio Podcast. Here we are, and if you were out and about last night, you might have seen me over at Becker Park, where one of my bands was playing, and it was really good to see everybody. I tell you, it was a beautiful night to be out on the stage, and it was great to be celebrating that this stage that no one has ever been able to use, it seems, is now beginning to be available for the public, as is the entire park. And maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But I want to introduce, as always, to my right,
the most criticized man in Crystal, Andrew Richter. It's always great to be here with you. Jason Bradley, by the way. I don't know if you introduced yourself.
I did not.
And yes, it was a very good night. You played in the band.
Yeah.
I spoke for us at a meeting.
Yeah.
We had a very productive evening last night. It was a pleasure and another productive night for Community Solutions Minnesota because, you know, we have no ideas at all and we have nothing to offer, so we have to do things like that to make a name for ourselves.
Absolutely. In fact, I had absolutely nothing to do at all with making sure that regular people have access to our city parks and entertainment.
Oh, you mean the things that they pay for?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah. Under former leadership, when I had written in asking to use that, I was told no. In about as many words.
25 years that building sat there and collected dust. It's been a huge waste.
Yeah.
It's just an example of if you build it, they will come, but we won't let them come. And that's changed a little bit. Well, you know, we got to get right into it here, my friends. We had a primary. Another primary went into the books on Tuesday the 12th. And depending on when you're listening to this, I mean, it's very recent right now, but you know, they're easy to forget, I guess. And we had an interesting one here in Crystal, our hometown where we live. Interesting, maybe a mild adjective to describe it. But another primary is in the books.
Absolutely, you know, and there's a number of things I think we need to look at to kind of break down exactly what we saw. I know I had written about it at a larger kind of overall scale. There's some individual precinct data, I think, that we need to look at that I think you're going to write about later on. But I thought we should have a conversation about that, as did you, with all of our friends out there in cyberspace. So we're going to go ahead and discuss that today. And
where would you like to start?
Why don't we just start with
overall?
Overall, do we want to? Yeah, let's just say what happened. So we had 3 elections here in Crystal, and for council member section 2, which is the whole northern half of Crystal, wards 3 and 4, we had 3 people running: Olga Parsons, Karen Lincoln, and John Buszczewski. Mm-hmm. So the way that it broke down, Olga Parsons got 48.67% of the vote, or 330 votes. Karen Lincoln got 25.07% of the vote, or 170 votes. And John Buszczewski got 26.25%, or 178 votes. So there were really only only 8 votes that separated the bottom 2 in that race. So that was very interesting to me.
Well, yeah, and I think, and we're going to I'm sure we'll get into this in the other 2 wards, where this was the only one that really had a strong third candidate present.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, Karen Lincoln's somebody who, you know, I disagree with on some issues and some tactics as well. But I think she showed that. She's a hard worker, and she had a message, whether you agreed with it or not. She was not all about these 2 cops, which was the thing that concerned me, was that it would just be sort of trashing the council and the police chief and the city manager, even though I don't think they're exempt from that. You know, I think that mistakes were made during their...
I do too, and I think that her point is legitimate, and I think as we go through, all of the non-incumbents seem to have this same message that we need more accountability, more transparency, that our current council, at least the power structure, the four that are in charge right now, are not doing enough to project that kind of transparency. And you wouldn't have, a contested primary in every ward like this if that was not the case.
Right, and transparency is about more than just taking the budget and throwing it up on the website.
Yes.
Or having a public hearing 5 minutes before you're going to vote on something. And I think that's what people often miss. The word transparency is used a lot, and some people kind of make fun of it, and I won't mention any names, but some people roll their eyes at it and act like a complete and total snob. But to me, transparency is, two things. One, are you serving for the right reasons? Mm-hmm. Are you serving for power's sake? Because if you're serving to represent people, you should never be afraid of talking to the people.
Right. The moment you think you have the best answers, even if your motivation is to help people, but you don't ever consult them on what they really need, that's where you run into problems.
Yeah, and I've been asked this before, when I ran, could the people, I do remember one person asking me when I was door knocking, could a bunch of people coming in a room at the council meeting change your mind about something? And the answer is yes, they could. Because, we were debating the parking restrictions that night.
Okay.
Because I hate that. I mean, I don't understand why I can't park on streets I pay for. I don't get what cops running around in residential areas handing out parking tickets while DWI people are, drunk drivers are flying down the street and we're handing out. I don't get why that is important. But I was talking to somebody who favored it, and I can't really remember why, but it was something about worried about a party house on the block or something like that. And, my response was, if I believed in something and 100 people came to the city and said, no, as my representative, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
I got to consider that. I mean, I've got to go, well, gee whiz.
Consider it, yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying people should have no principles. We should be governed by opinion polls. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm saying that, I just wonder how many people see themselves, like you always say, as a public servant.
Right. Well, and that's getting to the point of transparency, because when you decide, okay, I'm going to throw this up on the website after we've done it, or we're going to take some opinions right before we vote on it, really, that's not transparency. Transparency, you're able to see through something. Think of something that's transparent, a window or whatever. You're able to see through it. So through the entire process, you should be able to see what's happening and have input into it. Versus, I guess this is more like floating, like what do they say floats? I'm going to be a little polite there. But
a good example is what we're talking about right now. The budget talks are going on right now.
Yeah.
We'll have a public hearing on it in December.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in fact, last year, the proposed budget was never up on the website till after it was passed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that transparent? These people are voting on something, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the council's fault completely. I mean, but I think if the council really wanted that to happen, they could. But I mean,
they put pressure on city staff to make it happen,
right? And I mean, it's transparency is something you can never have enough of. You can just, and accountability is an issue. It is I think it's partly, and this is where I disagree with Ms. Lincoln. It's a part of it is our city charter. Our city charter does not empower the council to hire and fire employees as they see fit outside of the city manager. So it's the council can't rehire a police officer. And I've tried to tell these people that. And they just tell me, not Karen, but others have told me to go F my mother. And I don't understand it. I mean, like, look, why aren't you at a charter commission meeting saying, we think this is wrong and you should consider this change? So but they're right on the issue. They're wrong on their approach.
Right.
So but I will say for Karen, she proved she was no one-trick pony and was no joke. And she came within 8 votes of ousting an incumbent councilman. She got no reason to hang her head.
No, absolutely not.
In fact, this is also something to break down the precincts. Okay, just to let people know, there's 5 precincts in Section 2, which, like you said, is the northern, about 45th, 44th Avenue and north.
Yes.
And just to make a verbal description, if you're not sure what precinct you're in, Ward 4 Precinct 1 is over by the airport, Twin Oak, Crystal VFW, if you live in that area, which is where you and I both live.
Yeah.
Ward 4 Precinct 2 is the Lions Park and Broadway Park neighborhoods. Ward 3 Precinct 2 is the area by Forest Elementary, west of Douglas Drive, and the area like behind Super America and Octopus Car Wash, that area. And then Ward 3, Precinct 1 is the Welcome Park area and over by Steve-O's, and then the Kavanaugh. And then we have a very small Ward 3, Precinct 3, which is very small, south of Welcome Park there.
Yes.
So there are 5 precincts, and the results from those precincts were interesting.
Yeah, they sure were. I mean, let's just start with 3-1, the big one down there that you were discussing with Welcome Park and Kavanaugh.
And that's where both John and Karen live, by the way.
Yes,
that's their home precinct.
Yep. So Karen actually won that precinct with 57 votes. Olga had 48, so not that far behind. And John, who lives in that district, got 42 votes. So he came in last in his own precinct.
Yeah, I mean, that's... you'd think, I don't know too many people who lose their own precinct. And you ever heard of outside of Al Gore, you ever heard of a presidential candidate losing their home state?
No.
I mean, I've never heard it either.
It doesn't happen.
I guess Mitt Romney did too.
I guess he did.
But it's, that's a bad trend right there. Because if you think about it like this, about 80% of the people, 75% of the people there voted against him.
Yeah.
And, again, kudos to Karen. She got her neighbors and she had a lot of signs right there by Welcome Park. That's where she lives, just north of that. Mm-hmm. So, you look at Ward 3, Precinct 2, which is very big as well.
Yes.
And there was Ms. Parsons won pretty handily.
Right. Well, that's her precinct.
That's her
where
precinct.
She lives.
Yep. And so, but that's a good contrast of home precincts there who did better.
Yeah.
And it was in that. Really, in the other 4 precincts, it was no contest.
Right.
I mean, it really wasn't.
No.
I mean, Ward 4 was, 55 to 70 to 167.
Yeah.
I mean, so, some trends, and then this will be a similar trend to the other ones. The incumbent is climbing uphill, and I think the hill is full of mudslides.
When you make it by 8 votes, and you're an incumbent, I mean, that was the difference between you staying in the election or not. That's tough. And I know he went on Facebook and declared victory because he made it through the primary, but that's not a victory for an incumbent.
No, and I think we can't overstate this too much. I mean, we can't overreact to a primary. But I was following primaries in other cities, and incumbents sailed through. And usually they do. I mean, I'll give you an example. Yeah, I'm not a big Jeff Lundy fan. I know you're not either.
No.
He had 3 people running against him for mayor of Brooklyn Park, and he got damn near 60% of the vote against 3 people.
Yeah.
I mean, he cruise controlled through it. I mean, and that's what it is for most incumbents, because if there's a lot of challengers, usually they're dividing either an anti-incumbent vote.
Yeah.
Maybe it's ideological in some areas.
Or sometimes you have, I know this person.
Right. But there's that name that person in office always has a natural advantage, it seems.
Yeah.
And right now in Crystal, you are an incumbent. And I'm not sure it's universal to the 3 that are up right now. And you got people who really want this job running against you. You're in serious doo-doo. I mean, it's just... And, you'd think you mentioned what we'll call him he, wrote on his Facebook page. You'd think somebody who skated by 8 votes and did what he did, and we don't need to rehash it here.
Yeah.
Would show a drop of humility, or maybe rethink what they're doing. And I know I'm asking a lot, and I'll give he advice, since I know he's not smart enough to listen to me. It would do a great deal to maybe change strategies if you have 3/4 of the people. Because, those people who vote in August, they're showing up in November.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I think, it's hard to see. It's hard to see, for me, it's hard to see Karen's people coming and voting for John. To me, if you weren't for him this time, I don't know, and you cast a vote for somebody else, I don't know why you would all of a sudden cast your lot with him. And again, I don't want to overstate this. I don't want to make it sound like the election's over. I don't know what's going to happen in November. The only thing we can do is take the evidence we have and make our best determination.
That's true. It really is a guessing game. There's some strategies that go into it, and you can look at the numbers and you can kind of tell what the trends are in each area, because really, even though it's a more politically awake group of people that tend to vote in primaries, it's still really just a subsection of the people that live in that area. It doesn't mean that it's more right or more left or more centrist. It's just the more politically aware of that area. It's generally the same percentage-wise.
Right. Well, enough about that. I don't want to talk about he any more than we have to here. Let's move on to Ward 2, which is the middle southern portion.
Okay.
34th up to 44th, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and that would be the incumbent there. We'll give the... I clicked too soon.
No, that's right.
We'll give the vote totals. The incumbent is Joe Selton, Jeff Kolb, and Randy Rosario were the other two.
Yes, and so I just want to say, anyone that wants to look at these figures and facts that we're presenting, these are public knowledge that you can find out on the Secretary of State's website in their election results area, and it's got every city that had a primary in Minnesota. So if you have a question about your city and how those ended up, and even precinct by precinct, you can look that up and figure out what the trends are in your area as well.
Sure. And if you don't know your precinct, or you maybe you voted but you don't recall what your precinct number was, you can put in your zip code on the Secretary of State's website, and they will tell you. So you can get the results for your own precincts.
Absolutely. So
and the vote totals here are available at communitysolutions.mn.wordpress.com. Don't forget that too.
That is true. If you're looking for crystals specifically, we do have them up there. So we had the incumbent Joe Selton, who had 28.13% of the vote. That's 126 votes. Jeff Kolb, who had 57.59%, 258 votes. And Randy Rosario, who had 14.29% and 64 votes. Now, we have an incumbent here who did not even get a third of the vote. Generally, you think in a primary, okay, there's 3 of us, I need to get 30% to pass the primary. But lucky for him, Jeff did so well that 20% or 28% still got him through.
Well, and I say lucky for him, there was a third candidate who tried to run a campaign from his computer. And Randy Rosario's not a bad guy. He seems to be very thin-skinned. He doesn't like it when I called him out for not working hard. But, here's the thing. If you want to run for an office, you got to act like you want it. I'm sorry to say that, but when you don't show up for a debate, when you don't show up for a parade, when you don't show up to the frolics, when you're not out pounding on doors, and you're relying on people to find you. I can tell you firsthand, I showed up to all that stuff when I was running, night to night, spent $3 a vote and still lost.
Yeah.
It's no guarantee you're going to win. And I think, look, he got about half of Joe's vote, and he barely did a thing.
Yeah.
Imagine if he would have done what Karen does.
Joe would be sitting at home.
He might
too.
be.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because Mr. Rosario was not a stupid guy. I did read some of his stuff. I disagreed with some of it, but he didn't seem like a guy of no substance. He just seemed like a guy who didn't want it. And maybe he was talked into running. Could have been. That's my suspicion, but whatever. Whatever the case, as of August 12th, is yesterday's news. It's just disappointing. I mean, I wanted to see him debate. I wanted to hear him, what he thought about the issues of the day, where we know where Joe stands.
Yeah.
We know where Jeff stands. Whether we agree with them or not, just set that aside. Both of them aren't dishonest about what they want to do.
No.
You know, so...
no, and there's a public record of it, which is great.
Yeah. So we as voters have a choice. And so, but you know, if you go precinct by precinct here, it's...
Yeah.
You know, we've got again, there's 3 precincts, and
Yes.
Ward 2, Precinct 1 is Lee Park. It's the little bit that's east of Douglas, but before Robbinsdale.
Yep.
Ward 2, Precinct 2 is where Joe and Jeff both live, and that is west of Douglas Drive, but between 34th and Rockford Road.
Yes.
And then there's the Brownwood area is what that's called. And then there's this little patch of Ward 2, Precinct 3, which is over north of Douglas, north of 42nd, west of Douglas, south of 45th.
Yes.
So there's a little precinct, and all 3 were won by Jeff Kolb very handily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you add, you know, Randy and Joe's numbers together, and they still don't equal what Jeff got in each precinct.
Yeah, and especially the 2 big ones. I mean, it's going to be won and lost in those 2 big ones. Ward 4, Precinct 3 is there were only 68 or 66 votes cast in that precinct, and there probably will only be a couple hundred in the general, if that. But Kolb won. Yeah, like you said, you add the 2 together, and it still wasn't close.
Well, let's look at 2-1. I mean, Jeff got 110 votes. Joe got 46, and Randy got 27. I mean, it wasn't even close.
No.
You know, Joe got a lot more in 2-2. And that's where he lives, right?
That's where they both live.
That's where they both live, 2-2, okay. So Joe did a lot better in his own precinct. He got 65 votes. He didn't lose it, you know, like
Well,
John lost his.
He lost it, but he didn't come in third.
Right. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jeff got 114 in that precinct.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I've said before, I think it was a reflection on Mr. Kolb's presence. He had a lot of yard signs. He pounded on a lot of doors. I know Joe did some, but I think he did enough to skate by, is what I think. And again, you know, if I'm an incumbent, I mean, and in a primary comes and I get 28% of the vote, boy, I'm rethinking what I'm doing. But, you know, I don't know if that's the kind of council people we have. I think well, I'm not going to speculate on what they think. I mean, I got my opinion on it, but...
I'm just not sure how you can play that far behind. You know, we always talk in Minnesota sports about how we always play for the win from behind, whether it's the Twins or the Vikings.
But they don't win very much.
That's my point.
Yeah, Twins are down 6-0 in the third all the time.
Yeah, you can't come back from that kind of deficit. Once in a while it happens, but it's really hard.
Well, and I think what makes it even harder is when you're the incumbent, you're the known quantity. A lot of times people want to reelect you or they don't. It's really not...
Yeah.
You know, it's really not you know, I mean, if I asked you 4 years from now if you're going to be married to your wife and you tell me you're undecided, what does that say about your marriage?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What does it say about well, are you going to vote for me next? Well, I'm undecided.
Yeah.
Ouch. That's probably not good.
No.
So that's just a political fact. It doesn't mean that the race is over.
No.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can look at this and say, yipes, stripes. I mean, you got 3,500 registered voters. Historically in Minnesota, about 60-some-odd% show up in November, and it's higher in a presidential year, which this is not.
Right.
So you got to figure, okay, 2,000-something show up. Well, right now, If you combine the non-incumbent vote, it's over 300 and my Cooper math, 320 to 120. I mean, he's down 200 votes right now, and that should be the mindset that he's in. Whether it's really the truth or not, that's how you got to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
So take that analysis for what it's worth.
Yeah. All right. Well, lastly, let's take a look at Ward 1 here.
Right.
Ward 1, we had another 3-person race here. And
2 1/4, I would say. But
well, I mean, we had 3 names on the ballot, forcing us into a primary.
Right.
And the big winner of the night was Elizabeth Dahl with 57.61%, just barely edging out Jeff. So if she knows him, she can kind of give him some ribbing.
Oh, look at that. I didn't even notice that. 0.02%?
Yeah. Yeah. So enjoy that. And 246 votes total. Carla McPipe with 6.79% and 29 votes, and Mark Hoffman with 35.6% and 152 votes. So that's how it broke down. Again, I mean, we see an incumbent that got hit really hard. And I think you were kind of making analogies to how hard Carla worked here by saying that we had a partial candidate, which, I mean...
Well, one thing that worked was the Amber Alert we sent out on her. That worked a little bit.
And I hate to say that, because every time you have a race where there's a primary, there's usually 1 or 2 people that just kind of try it on a lark to see, you know. And so I don't want to say that.
But the voters always see through that, though, especially primary voters.
I think it's just, you know, it's hard if you have a lot of other things going on and you don't make a commitment to running. And you're not invested in your community so that a lot of people know you and see you on a regular basis, whether you're coaching or whether you're just involved with the different activities going on in your community. Nobody knows who you are and they don't trust you.
I did see that Carla McPipe is against Bottineau Light Rail. Did you see that?
I did. I did. And let me tell you this.
Complimentary toward that. She actually articulated it in the paper very well.
Let me tell you this. If I had lived in Ward 1, and I don't vote in Ward 1, okay? I'll make that clear.
We're not going to vouch for you?
No, please don't. Just by reading their things in the paper, I just sat back and I'm like, you know, I think I almost could vote for her. I wasn't fond of putting government money into youth, you know, a lot of youth stuff. There's some stuff where I think they need to be present, and I think we need to do more for our youth in Crystal. But so she has an issue there, and I
hope she
with
follows through on it.
I'd like to see her do something privately and see what kind of things she could start, and I think our city council might, you know, come behind her and help her on that.
Well, but it's the Randy Rosario problem.
Yeah,
if you're not going to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to win. I can't express that enough. I've seen people work their asses off and lose. You just, if you're going to be a name on it, and I think it's sad. I think it's sad what Miss McPipe did. I don't dislike her, and I've never even met her. But, you know.
I'm sure she might be a nice person, but.
It's politics.
If you're interested in having a seat on the council someday, you know what I would do? I would start drawing up plans today for what kind of youth programs you think the city needs.
Hey, join the park board. On the park board if that's an issue she's passionate about.
Absolutely. And that's how you get involved and you start having a voice in the community. I mean, that's what we teach everybody when we have our training sessions and stuff like that. You got to be involved, and
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, you got to get on a commission. You got to get involved in your city. You got to show a vested interest.
You got to take your passion and turn it into action.
Yeah,
that's what you have to do. That's the things we've done.
That's why, you know, we're sitting here doing this today, because we've turned our passion into action.
No, it's because when we talk, people listen. That's why.
Well, you know,
that didn't happen overnight.
It did not happen overnight. It's a process, and it takes a while to get there. But, anyways, getting back to this, you know, I think that when we break this down by precinct, I mean, it is a lot like Ward 1 and Ward 2. You know, they're pretty similar, but granted, because Carla didn't do quite as well as Randy did, the numbers looked like they tended to skew in Mark Hoffman's favor a little bit more than they did for Joe.
Yeah, I think that that's true, and I think Mark's a longtime incumbent. I am a little surprised that he is not as well known as you'd think. I mean, he hasn't had an opponent in a long time. I'm guessing the people who originally voted him in back in the 90s, 75% of them probably don't live there anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he has the base that you'd think he's not as strong as you'd think an incumbent. Like think of Gary Grimes, who we had over here. Gary was really hard to beat.
You were never going to vote Gary out.
And Gary was a nice guy, and he was, even when he was 70, he was serving at the steak fry at the VFW, and you saw him beating Gary would have taken a Herculean effort. But I think with Hoffman, I don't get the sense that, you go somewhere in Crystal, you don't see Mark Hoffman anywhere. I mean, I've never seen him at, I dare say I've never seen him at the Frolics. I've never seen him at airport days. He might have been there last year, but I didn't go because it rained. You just don't see him around.
No.
And
I guess I would say that I've never seen any of them, any of the incumbents around.
Well, John, you're seeing him
now.
Yeah, as soon as he's in trouble, you're seeing him.
Yeah, Joe I've seen over at Bill's Guns Range, but that's it. He was a customer, and he happened to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen him at airport days with Renee before, but that was when Renee was running.
Right.
So I just don't think that they're real strong here. And again, you see the same kind of dynamics. Ward 1, Precinct 1 is a real big precinct. And if you don't know, that's kind of Bassett Creek and the Valley Place area. And it's a big, big area.
Yeah.
And that really should be Mark's territory. He lives over by Bassett Creek.
Yep.
And he did okay there.
Yeah.
But again, for a 4 or 5 term incumbent, I don't remember which it was. I think it's at least 4. He should have gotten 70% of the vote in the precinct, and he lost it.
He lost it. I mean, granted, only by 25 votes.
Right, and Elizabeth got with Carla getting, she got about 50%.
Yeah, I mean, that's where almost all of Carla's votes came from, was from that district as well. So you look at Mark having 100 votes, you look at Elizabeth at 125 and Carla at 27. And again, I mean, you have this anti-incumbent sentiment coming from Carla's campaign. So you're not going to add those votes to Mark Hoffman's total.
Like I said, if they're smart and they're looking at this, they're 52 votes behind in that precinct.
Yeah.
So, and then the other 2, which if you don't know, again, is the Winnetka Hills. They're smaller precincts.
Yeah.
But it's over where the part of Crystal, the southwest part of Crystal that sticks out. And there it was really no contest. I mean, it wasn't close. And I don't think Mark's got much of a presence over there. I think the Mill and Overlay project is, an issue that is going to hurt him there. That's just my opinion, but I think it is going to hurt. I think Elizabeth has jumped on that issue, and they're the people who are getting an assessment and a tax increase. They're getting 2.
Yeah,
and that's going to be hard for Mark. I mean, Elizabeth can say whatever she wants to. She didn't have to take a vote.
Yeah,
that's the one advantage of not being in office, is you don't have a record to criticize.
Absolutely,
or to scrutinize. Maybe is a better term. And again, I mean, I think Mr. Hoffman is going to have to work. Despite the public stuff going back and forth, somebody I still respect. And little known fact is I once voted for him. But
on you.
Well, when I was choosing,
it was against Renee.
Him and Renee in retrospect wasn't much.
So
choice.
I think I voted for him as well that year. Yeah.
Okay, that was when I first moved back to Crystal. So, and I don't know that I'd change my vote, to be honest.
I wouldn't.
So
I can guarantee you had my support that year.
But again, that was 10 years ago. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And with the mortgage stuff that went on and there's a lot of apartments down there.
Yeah.
Half the people are gone from them. I mean, it's. And Elizabeth really represents that. Her and her husband have been, about 5 years they've been in Crystal.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so they came in and sized up the neighborhood and decided that they wanted to get involved and they've been involved in a lot of stuff non-political.
Non-political.
Yeah,
I mean, all their neighbors know who they are.
So and again, it just Mr. Hoffman's going to have to go out there and pound that door. And he's going to have to leave state representatives home. That is not going to go over well.
No.
You got to campaign it yourself. And if you're a 4-term incumbent, you should need somebody to hold your hand to go door knock. I think it's kind of pathetic to go out there and get some hired gun. I think it probably cuts against them to try to do that.
Well, these are nonpartisan races. And it says that right at the top. In fact, looking at the Secretary of State's website as we get these numbers, it says nonpartisan. That means that you're not endorsed by or part of representing a political party. Why? Because these issues really are dealt with at our front door, at our kitchen table, with our neighbors out in our yards. And nobody says, hey, you know what the DFL is saying we should do? They don't do that. They say, oh, man, you know, I need to, my grass is getting too long for the city ordinance, but my lawnmower's broke down and I can't afford to fix it, or I don't have enough money to pay my property taxes this time around. That's the stuff that they worry about. It's not, hey, you know what the new regulation coming in from the Republican Party is? We got to do that.
Well, and I would add too that I think the dumbest thing you can do in a local race is campaign partisanly. I think you will. First off, you'll turn half the people off by not even saying anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if I knock on somebody's door and say, hello, I'm a Democrat, hello, I'm a Republican, you, in whatever your preconceived notions of those, boom, the imaginary wall comes up, and they don't want to hear another word.
Yeah.
Now, if you knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I'm your neighbor, this is something I did in my own neighborhood. I live over here, 2 blocks away, and I'm running, and here's why, here's what's happened to me, and I'm curious what... Well, people are... Boy, you might be the only person who's knocked on their door in 10 years. It happened to me. You know, and it's a totally different approach. And I think it speaks to something that you summed up very well in your blog post about this, that these 3 incumbents are in serious trouble.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, I want to piggyback on that. I mean, Ward 1, Precinct 2, and Precinct 3, total of 52 votes for Mark Hoffman. In Ward 1, Precinct 3 alone, Elizabeth got 52 votes. And she got 69 more in her own precinct. So we're really looking at this huge gap. I mean, 69 more votes just between those 2 precincts.
Yeah, and I just think it's indicative of, again, a couple things. One, somebody's hard work, and somebody's door knocking, and somebody's appeal, somebody's message, somebody's ability to be public. And I think there's a malaise about the council. I mean, I think that, you got 3 incumbents that I think combined have done 32 years. On the council, and there is an anti-incumbent feeling here. There was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What happened 2 years ago? One councilman was ousted in a primary by 2 people who worked harder.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Look, Dave Anderson, Laura Libby, and Guy Mueller were not that far apart on a lot of issues.
No.
But they were on some. But they weren't. It wasn't an independent, a conservative, and a liberal.
No.
It wasn't that way.
No.
And yet, what happened? The person who worked the hardest, the people who had the most signs, people who were in the parade, they're the people who came out on top.
Yeah.
And I would mention something, too, about trying to make these elections partisan. Well, I kind of lost my train of thought. Well, maybe I won't go there. I just think it's... I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, I don't get... here's where I was going. I'm going to tone it down to what I was originally thinking. But, you and I worked for some issue. We have worked for a lot of issues and stand for a lot of things, like even year elections everywhere, like urban farming, backyard chickens, changes to our charter and our city code, issues like the work sessions being audio like they are now. And I'm not sure without you and me they ever would have been. And without Jim and some other people who are in there now.
But he really stepped up and made it happen.
But I mean, we agreed with him on that issue. But those issues are not necessarily conservative and liberal.
No.
I want people to have the option on their private property to have backyard chickens if they choose. Is that a conservative position or a liberal position?
It's neither.
Right.
People have the right to eat. And so if it means by growing your own food, so be it.
Hey, my mom and dad had a garden for
Yeah.
a long time. We ate high on the town when she was alive, let me tell you.
But yeah, I mean, that's really the issue. When you break it down, it's not about this left and right thing. It's about having the right to eat. And who disagrees with that?
Yeah, and
Republicans, Democrats,
Right,
Independents?
And the other
Nobody.
thing, issues you've brought up
Yeah.
about speeding on your street. I mean,
Yeah.
is that a conservative position or a liberal position? Oh, I don't know. I'm concerned about the damn road I live on. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why I think it's so dumb to try to make everything about. And it's just something that I think that will backfire. But again, like I said before, I don't want to overstate these results. I don't know what will happen in November, but
Right.
history tells us.
Yes.
You go back to 2012,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to look at that.
you can see trends that happen.
Right.
When I was running, and it was me and Renee and Jim, Renee did win the primary.
By what, 150 votes total?
Separating the three of
between
us.
you and her.
Something like
with her
that.
winning it, yeah.
But if you look at her percentage, she got 38%.
Right. She got 38%, and when the election came around, I mean, most of the people I'm sure all of the people that voted for you more or less went around over to Jim.
But like I said, she started 450, 500 votes behind.
Yeah.
And it really was the truth. And you look at Guy Mueller,
Yeah.
who won the primary. He got about 38% of the vote down there. Now you
Yeah.
might say, well, he won against three other people.
Right.
Very hard to get 50% when
Yeah.
4 people are in the race. But it didn't translate into a win
No.
in 2000. And
It did not.
And what I'm pointing out is, even though this data here does not mean these 3 races are over, it doesn't mean the 3 non-incumbents are just going to cruise control to victory. It tells you, as of August of 2014, the people who are dedicated, who care, who are going to show up, people who are on commissions, the people who volunteer, the people who really, the city's run by people who show up. You see the state of the race right now.
Yeah. The people who are engaged in their city, who understand what's happening, who are tuned in, they're telling you right now how they feel about their city and the direction it's going. I mean, that's really what a primary is.
It is an indicator. It's not always an exact science,
No.
but
I mean, when you look at these numbers, though, when you look at 25 or 26% to 48%, 35% to 57%, 28% to 57%. I mean, if you're an incumbent and you're that lower number, when, like you were saying, you've got a couple people who aren't incumbents splitting the vote with this anti-incumbent feel. How you make that ground up, I think, is a really big question.
well, the first thing, and again, I'll give the 3 of them advice. They won't listen to me. First thing you got to do is, from here on out, work your arse off. You can't take a day off. You can't assume certain people of a certain ideology are just going to come out and vote for you. I think what's more telling, even than this vote total, were their financial reports.
Yeah.
Do you know not a citizen of Crystal, nobody, has donated 1 cent to the 3 incumbents?
Nope.
Not 1 penny. So Crystal citizens want these 3 to be reelected so much, they gave them 29% of the vote cumulatively,
Yeah.
and not 1 penny
Yes.
to run for reelection. Now, that is either now again, that's something they've got to do too. If they think they're going to win an election with no money, they're out of their minds. They got to fundraise, which takes away time from knocking on doors. The three people running have already done. They've already laid that groundwork. One of the candidates is sitting on $1,900.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to raise another cent. So, and again, like I said, it doesn't mean it's over. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm saying you're not only starting down votes, you're down resources, you're down time, because it's very compressed, and there's other elections going on.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to get lit from everybody.
Yeah, here's where all the governor lit starts coming, the
Senator,
U.S. Senate list.
We got state representative candidates that are out there, which means the state reps probably aren't going to be... They got their own races to worry about.
They do.
It's no more holding a council member's hand. It's just... hey, look, it's an uphill battle. But, I have to say something about the non-incumbents. 6 months ago, they were the underdogs, and they had to do this hard work, and they had to lay this ground. And it can be done.
Yeah.
But, we've got we're filming this on the 15th, and, there's about 10, 11 weeks.
Yeah.
Absentee ballots start the first week of October.
Yeah.
There's not much time to change somebody's mind.
No, they don't.
Do we go on enough about that? I do want to say one more thing.
Yes.
You mentioned this on the blog. Turnout in the primary overall is just, again, dismal. Bristol was a little higher than the state. It always is.
Yeah.
But to see, I think it was 10, 11, 12% statewide. What's it going to take, Jay? Let me ask you. What's it going to take to get people to vote in primaries?
People have to understand that a primary is not just something we do for fun. Those of us
certainly
that
don't
are
do it for
politically
fun.
Involved. They're expensive. They're time consuming. They spend a lot of energy for the candidates. But this is. How do I phrase it? If you have ever heard the term, I'm sick and tired of voting for the least of, or the lesser of two evils.
Choosing between bad and worse.
Yeah. You don't have to do that. You have a chance to figure out who all of your candidates are and put the best person in the primary. Now, I'm saying this at a local level because I've got different feelings about our primary system when we're talking partisan politics and how it relates to a Republican, small r, Republican form of government because, those people spend a lot of time and money going through the convention process to endorse somebody, and they're elected by people who come to caucus. And so I think that once somebody is endorsed by a political party, no matter the political party, unless that person has committed fraud in some way by saying, yes, I believe this when they really don't, and it comes out, or something like that.
The primary is a safeguard.
I think it should be an escape hatch, not just a second try.
Yeah, but that's what it's... And unfortunately, I think you're going to see this every single time.
I don't know. Looking at this year's results and how bad all the challengers got smacked down in both the U.S. Senate rates, McFadden got like 70% or something like
higher
that.
than that. Yeah.
And Jeff Johnson did really well in his. I think that the Republicans at least are saying that they value the caucus and convention system, but the Democrats, the last time around where they endorsed Margaret Anderson Kelleher and then voted for Dayton in the primary.
And Matt Intenzo was in that race.
Yeah.
And also, if you get rid of the caucus system, you're going to have nothing but millionaires running. It'll all be the 1,000 big donors who dictate everything. I mean, it'll be more Intenzos, more Daytons.
Who can afford the most ads?
Yeah. I mean, do you think any governor candidate's going to come to a convention, a local convention, a Tea Party?
No.
I mean, and whatever those events are on the left. I'm not making it about Republican, Democrat, because they both have the same dynamics. Keep in mind, though, Jeff Johnson got well under 50% of the vote, and I'm not sure that... I know there's somebody out there thinking next time around, that... What bothers me is skipping the endorsement process altogether.
Yeah.
That's what really pisses me off. It's not so much, everybody's ripping on Marty Seifert, but Marty didn't cause a primary. There was a primary regardless of whether he
Zellers was going to a primary, and so was Honor.
Yeah.
They already said, and they didn't show up to anything before that.
It was all part of their little game, and I don't know what's going to stop that. I do think there are problems with the caucus system. I do think there are reforms that are needed. I hate an August primary. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
I think the process has become too long, and it's just. But part of that is you got to raise money. You got to,
Yeah.
because of campaign limits.
Right.
Ronald Reagan, when he ran for president, was
Yeah.
financed by a couple of millionaires.
Right.
You can't do that anymore, even if you create a super PAC, because the super PAC can't work with the.
Yeah.
It's it's just
Yeah.
It's by freedom of speech, though, is to me protects campaign contributions, my right to petition government, and my
Yeah.
right to freedom of speech.
Right.
It's just, I think it's fundamental.
So, all that said, looking at the
Yeah.
local level, I do favor a primary for the local level because I think
It's nonpartisan.
it's nonpartisan. You're not running people from parties unless you're in Minneapolis or St. Paul or something like that, and they just decide to do it. I think it's supposed to be nonpartisan still, but everybody endorses whatever in there, and they seem to love it. But they also have the ranked choice voting, which I know Crystal was looking at. I don't think it's going to even come to a vote this year, but
It's not being serious.
it's been a mess, and for people thinking that they get more of a chance. Well, you give a better chance to come in second or third. The winner is still the winner.
It's a solution in search of a problem.
It is, and I think that's the only. You got really three options. You got your primary, your ranked choice voting, or you just don't hold a primary, and whoever gets the most votes wins. I think you got to have a primary.
I think so too. I think it's got to get down to a choice.
Yeah.
And it eliminates joke candidates. It eliminates people who are wasting our time, because the good, serious people will usually come through. And I like the primaries too because it forces people to work hard.
Yeah.
It forces you to get out earlier. It forces you to. I think it helps candidates too. If you go through a primary process, well, you've already knocked down doors. You already got a brand out there. You've already debated. That's got to help a candidate who's never run before.
Yeah.
Not to do all that for the first time in October.
Yeah.
So I think it can be an advantage and it also forces the incumbents to defend themselves twice. They've got to get through two things to get reelected. But the worst thing we can have is incumbents not challenged.
Yes.
Even if they're people that I personally agree with.
Yeah.
I think a good, healthy debate is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
So, but of course, we don't stand for anything, so I don't know
No.
how that. Yeah, so I don't know how
You
that's
got
possible.
that, I guess. So that's probably as much information as we can give you, and maybe more than you even wanted to know about the 2014 primaries here in Crystal. And again, if you're listening to this and you're not from this area, which kudos if you put in almost an hour here on a city that's not yours. But always, as we've always said, what's happening here is really happening there. Because I'll tell you, you were talking about before how a lot of other cities you didn't see this anti-incumbent situation, this feeling happening. We didn't really hear either, say 6 years ago. Maybe there was a little bit of turmoil starting when we all started to see these changes out on 81 and stuff like that. But prior to that, I think the general population was all right with things.
Like you stated before, their actions are what prompted people like us to act. And I think there was opposition, but it wasn't organized. It wasn't focused, and it was all focused on whatever issue was going on that day.
Yeah.
And people will pay attention when you're fixing the pothole on their street. The key is to get them to pay attention all the time. And there was no place like Community Solutions to go.
Yep.
And we're not the only game in town, but when you have a council member running against a current mayor, like 2008, that vote with each other 95% of the time, that's probably a good indicator that there's really not much change in the air. But when you have strong people who want to take either the city in a different direction for whatever reason, it does. That's when those things start to pop up. Yes, God, you're saying what I've been waiting for somebody else to say.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have that feeling, and
Yeah.
I think there is and I'll say one last thing. I think there is a desire for, you've been in there for 4 terms or 2 terms. That's enough. You've served your city. It's somebody else's turn.
Yeah.
And I think that's effective as well. That, even if you respect the people in office, and I'm not necessarily directing this to Crystal, even if you respect the people in office, like, okay, you've had your chance. If you had a new idea, we would have heard it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You can probably figure the people I'm talking to there. And a vote for you is just a vote to keep doing what we're doing. And if you don't like that, we got somebody else. So.
Yeah. So I guess where I'm headed with that, and you're right on, is that undercurrent may not be visible in your city, but I can tell you that it's there, because much like the things we didn't know about Crystal, you'll find out about your city that the transparency really isn't there, that work meetings are happening where they're agreeing to things, and you never hear about it. Yeah, comprehensive plan, how far in league they are with the Met Council, all this stuff is going on in your city, and I can guarantee it, especially in the metro area, that is an issue. And if you spent time learning about this stuff and teaching people about this stuff like we have, that you would begin to see these things develop in your city as well, and it wouldn't seem quite so incumbent friendly when they're doing these things that really are stripping the power away from the individual, which is the way it should be.
Right. And I would say one last thing on that, though. You can't run for office and educate people at the same time.
No.
The education has to come first.
Yeah.
You've got to have a presence, have themes. That's how we got started. And you got to take those themes and put them into action. But you can't do that and run at the same time. I'm Exhibit A, where you can't stand at somebody's door and educate them on what a comprehensive annual financial report is for half an hour.
That's true.
Those are the things I did, and it was a mistake. Even though I do feel we have a smarter voting base, because people, not only me, but us and other people in the community have pointed out. And you take the mill and overlay debate, which we'll get into in a future podcast, what we had with Mayor Adams, that debate would have never happened 5 years ago.
Right.
5 years ago, they'd have put it on the credit card. They wouldn't have even thought about it. 7 heads together wouldn't have come up with one new thought.
And we would have been reporting it after it already passed.
Right. It would be on our debt service forever.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of where new people on a council, even though they did not win the issue
Primary.
in the end.
Yeah. Okay.
On the current council, managed to get people focused on it and thinking about it, and of course gave us something to write about.
Yeah.
They're the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're running and you just feel like people aren't getting it, or maybe you don't feel like you understand everything yet, get in touch with us. Email us at comsolutionsmn@gmail.com.
Yeah, and whatever you do, do not email your city finance director. You'll get more gobbledygook, more diarrhea from them than anybody else. They'll try to impress you with their big words and they'll make you more confused. You'll be so confused you'll walk into a door. It's that bad. So please do get a hold of us. We'd love to talk with people that are interested in learning how their cities run, whether it's dealing with transit or finances or street reconstruction or whatever. We've been around the block a few times now, and I think we're getting a really good handle on a lot of the tricks that seem to be used from city to city to city, because they all borrow from each other. Monkey see, monkey do.
And so email us, or make sure you keep up on our blog, because the things that we write about, the things we talk about here, they pertain to all the cities in the metro for sure, and probably Duluth and Rochester and St. Cloud and Moorhead and you name it. So the things that we talk about, share them with your neighbors, but consult with us, because we can help you organize, and we can help you figure out the best way to approach your city. And it might be just sending an email. That might just get it done if enough people email their incumbents. And it might take stronger measures like it has here. And that's just kind of saying it the way it is.
Measures, don't we?
So read on at communitysolutionsmn.wordpress.com.
Check out the two most criticized men in Crystal, which are not members of the city council, that's for sure.
No, we are not. So, all right. Well, we're also on Twitter at ComSolutions, and we got a Facebook group. Com has to be a part of it. We'd love to have you join the discussion, because a lot of people are getting together and throwing their own ideas in these groups, and we're all learning from each other. So with that, at the 1 hour mark, we are going to put a wrap on episode 8 here. It has been fantastic, and we will see you again soon with episode 9. Take care, and so long.